Oh yeah, and sorry I don't have a presentation per se. It's I've just been slammed at work. One of the things that I need to talk about is scaling up when you have a really good salesperson. Yeah. So yeah, just for example, we at Mule Extracts, we use Eden Labs 20-liter high flow for CO2 extraction, and then just do the basic winterizing and refining of the oil. But what we were forecasting, we sell gummies on the THC side, and what we were forecasting for about 20,000 units of sales for gummies this month, we've actually scaled up to 60,000, which we were forecasting for April. So we're getting slammed with scaling up our equipment, our kitchen, and everything. Okay, so, all right, like I said, I'm with Mule Extracts. We're located in Estacada, Oregon. We are licensed on the marijuana processing side with THC here in Oregon, and we're currently scaling up and moving our CBD processing facility that will hold a new ODA license. We don't really do sales on our CBD side, it just sells itself, as maybe some of you have found. Where we're collaborating on a space, we're now looking at a 3,000 square foot space just for ourselves, and that's just a year of CBD tincture and salve sales on a website. So, so scaling up is essential in your business plan. Okay, so like I said, we use CO2 for doing our extraction. As well, we capture essential oils with two different methods, one during the drying of our raw material before extraction, and the other with steam distillation. We then blend the specific essential oils with the same strain base CO2 oil to match the flower profile. Our method creates a vape cartridge with essence true to the flower. I know a lot of people are doing that, and steam distillation has become more popular. Something that I've had a real passion for, because there's always been in the past the argument of, is it really a good terpene or essential oil if it's not coming from the cannabis plant? So I've been looking forward to the scaling of hemp. So that we can make a larger scale steam distillation to capture those essential oils from steam distillation that we don't really have the production level yet on the THC side to make the sacrifice of our flowers in steam distillation. But with hemp, you do have the production yields from your fields that we can just blast through that flower with steam distillation and just do a mass amount of cannabis-specific essential oil collection. So that's part of what I'm doing now is I'm scaling up from 3,000 liter steam distillation to, 3 liter steam distillation, looking at a 50 liter. Just show of hands here. How many people in here are farmers? All right, and how many of you are processors doing oil extraction? And are any of you doing steam distillation? Okay, kind of, sort of one person. All right, cool. All right, so the essential oils that you're getting off from steam distillation are very valuable, and people are paying a lot of money for those. It's upwards about $150 for, I think, like 1 ounce, up to $300 for a 1 ounce bottle of cannabis-derived terpenes. So as a hemp farmer, I encourage you to look into that use for your raw material or sending it down the field that way. Okay, so yeah, and I'll be one of those people that will be eager to buy your steam distilled essential oils too. Okay, cool, and my scaling up of our productions. All right, so steam distillation, right now we're just using chromatograph reservoirs. They're just 2 glass balls, and we just have a boiling flask, and the water goes up through the plant matter, and then I have 2 condensing tubes that with a special separator, and I can, it pulls off the hydrosol, of course, and then the essential oils sit on top of the hydrosol. So in scaling up to that, from that, I'm looking at like a 50-liter stainless steel vat that has a separate boiler on it, and then the steam travels vertically, goes through the plant matter, collects in a condenser tube, and then, of course, drips down, and you can separate off from there. And these are the things that we're looking at in scaling up, is going from like 3 liters to 50 liters or 20 liters to 600 liters on our oil production. Like I said, our CBD tincture and salve the sales have gone through the roof. And we visited with the processors down the street who have 60 liters, they have 5 60-liter vats for cold ethanol extraction. And so we will possibly go to them until we scale up our extraction site in our new facility. So just making leeway for adjustments in our scaling up of sales until we can start making that in-house ourselves. So things to always consider when you're putting forth your business plan. Okay, so a lot of you guys have been through the FDA presentations and learning a lot about what are the 4 main focuses, topics of the FDA, and that's being labeling, handling, manufacturing, and holding. So I'm going to talk about those 4 topics throughout the presentation. And I have quite a bit of FDA experience. In 2018, I worked at Herbco International as a greenhouse production manager. Herbco is the nation's largest co-packer of organic culinary herbs. We have 125 acres in field and 7,500 square feet in greenhouses. I managed the FDA inspection of the greenhouses, and we received a passing score of 99%. And we lost 1% for forgetting to put the lids on the trash cans outside the greenhouse. Let's see, the experience I gained working with the FDA, CGMP requirements, and all the paper documentation at Herbco fully prepared me for what we need to do with our cannabis facilities. So when you're looking at your FDA certification, reach out to somebody who has worked with FDA CGMP food facility before. They're far and few in between, but having that experience on the documentation demand of the CGMP will be very valuable because it is paper intensive. At one FDA seminar I went to, they said CGMP stands for get more paper, or get more people, and they're right. I spent 2 weeks catching Herbco up on their paperwork, and that was just in tracking the employee. At the greenhouses, we have every week, at the end of the week, we have to track whether or not the facilities are good for the employees in the hand washing, the bathroom, make sure they have water, and all of the personal safety devices and their eye wash stations are clean. So there's a lot of documentation that goes with having an FDA facility. Okay, so yeah, my background. So my folks are alfalfa farmers down in Fort Rock, Christmas Valley. So anybody know where that is? Here, show of hands? Yeah? All right, cool, way out there. They've been growing alfalfa since the early 60s. And when I was out swathing and moving wheel lines, I was always hoping that we'd have field of hemp and along with alfalfa. Because alfalfa farmers, they direly need another crop to grow that's going to give them more cash. So they used to grow mint out in Christmas Valley, and when they harvested the mint, they'd put the harvest inside of tanker trucks, and then those tanker trucks would go to a facility in Christmas Valley, and they would do a steam distillation of all the mint oil, and then collect it there, and then distribute it out of Christmas Valley. But then there was like some kind of bacteria infection that hit the mint fields, and that all died off, and it stopped. So you have to prepare for that. So when we're scaling up in our oil extractions of cannabis, I keep that in mind of seeing those tanker trucks just drive up to the facility, and they'd hook up the big pipes to the truck, and they'd do all the distillation right in the truck, collect all of the oils off of that, and then the truck would go and deposit the wasted material. And it was fantastic. And when I'm at MJ BizCon looking at this equipment that you need, 2 stories of stainless steel stairs to get to the top of. I mean, this stuff is like millions of dollars just to get started. And I'm thinking of these tanker trucks and the simple distillation that they have. I'm like, no, there's an easier way. There's a more practical way that we can do this. And then meeting a lot of people who are venturing into cold ethanol extraction has been fascinating because it's such a simple method. You just need to get your ethanol temperature down to, minus 40 or, and you can do that easily with a coil, thermal coil, in your vats. One fella has a walk-in freezer, and he just keeps his 50-gallon drums lined up in the walk-in freezer, and then he just pulls off from there and does the simple distillation and fractionation. So there are a lot of inexpensive, practical methods of making your cannabis oil. Okay, so another thing. So before considering extraction, make sure your business plan includes scaling up to meet the demand of your salespeople. You can spend a lot of money on the glassware for your lab. You can spend a lot of money on the stainless steel in your lab, the chillers. It can be very expensive getting into this business. So make sure that, you're not starting out with something that's only going to suffice the medical cooperatives. You need to start out with the thought of, I'm going to be pushing out, let's say, 500 pounds of oil a month, right? You're selling bulk oil. What is it? Well, in your business plan, you got to realize what is it you want to do. Do you just want to make oil? Do you want to make oil and products? You want to make products that are a finished product. Most practical method that I've seen is farmers who make oil on their farm. And then that way they're only transporting a smaller bulk material rather than transporting bales of hemp or, the big totes of hemp. It's much more practical to transport buckets of oil than, or in my case, jars of oil. Buckets of oil, but someday we'll have tankers of oil rather than bales of hay or hemp. So thinking about your location for your extraction facility is vital with your bottom line. Some states have incentives for building new businesses in regions that are economically deprived. Oregon has that. Up in Washington, not so much. It worked really well in Grays Harbor, Washington, but not so great in Okanagan County, and the reason being is that it depends on the local resident status and unemployment. Okanagan County is all orchards, and they have an influx of migrant farm workers, but not very many local citizens, whereas in Grays Harbor, the unemployment rate was high, and the cost of electricity and warehouse space was low. So looking at your bottom line, you got to think about labor and labor turnover, and then are there people with the smarts to actually do the labor? You can write all the SOPs in the world, but having the analytical thinking and critical thinking of following those SOPs and what to do if something goes wrong, and having the guts to actually ask a question when there's error made, that's what you're looking at in your labor force. So considering where you're setting up your facility is important in considering your need for labor. Also, location matters in consideration of distribution. Some companies have built small distribution centers, and others utilize wholesalers and distributors and private carriers. When it comes to shipping oil, you got to have that contract in place with the person, your buyer, and as the shipper, and then with your shipping company, is that where does that responsibility lie when the shipment goes awry? Does it lie with the shipper, does it lie with the sender, or does it lie with the buyer? So having that in your contract, which is just basic, what do they call it, the universal code, commercial code of business and contract law. So shipping is covered under that stuff, and when it comes to hemp and CBD oil, make sure you have that contract in place for your movement of your product. Mostly location matters for your business goals. Since the FDA has restricted use of CBD oil to topicals and tinctures, cold ethanol extraction is the most efficient method to create oil. Let's see. Ideally, we want to reduce our carbon footprint or demand for gasoline and transport the smaller mass or tankers of oil instead of bales of hemp. And that would require the oil production to be in the farming areas. I know a lot of farming areas, they need to expand what kind of labor they have available, especially out in the hay farm area. There's a lot of jobs that are needed out there. Okay, so processing, preparing your raw material for extraction. at the farm. And again, ideally, oil producers will have sustainable relationships with farmers. I prefer to buy material from a farm who can also grind it. That keeps the mess out of my facility and on the farm where it is easier to handle. In your FDA CGMP SOPs, you can require the farmer to label your batch and store it in a holding quarantine space until all regulations are met for the product to be transferred. So with all of that, with your relationship with your farmer, it'll grow over time and what it is that you two need to do with each other to make your business easier. When you're processing thousands or harvesting tens of thousands of pounds of hemp off your field, or you're buying thousands of pounds at a time, there's going to be thousands of pounds that just need to sit someplace. And most extraction processing facilities don't have the space to store all of that raw material. So farmers really need to consider having, more than just a hay shed, but a pole building with some environmental controls to keep that hemp material dry. Up in Okanagan, my pot farm, we have access to an old apple warehouse, and it has 35-foot by 35-foot, 30-foot ceilings and big air mover fans, and they seal the rooms, do a nitrogen flush of the entire room, vacuum it out, and that's how they store apples. But then we found, of course, it's awesome for weed. And then in our extractions, we have actually a 15% higher terpene profile on the flowers that come out of that apple warehouse than weed that's just fast dried and stored, and just to get the moisture out of it. So curing and drying is a big consideration. It's best done by the farmer where you have the space, the electrical supply available to do it. And then if there are old warehouses around here, look into investing in those as a cooperative of farmers to store your harvest. And that's basically what we did up in Okanagan. We have the Tenasca Growers Cooperative. And there are, I think there's like 50 of these rooms. They're in two separate buildings. And then each farm has a room of their own. So taking tips from other industry, utilizing their space is going to be essential for the success of the hemp industry. So packaging. Only use food-grade containers. Non-food grade containers will emit chemical odors and possibly contaminate with transference of chemicals due to the solvent activity of cannabis oil. As you know, cannabis oils have many different compounds in them, and solvents like to dissolve other solvents. Other oils are attracted to other oils. So if you have a plastic container, depending on what that plastic is made of, it's possible your terpenes and your oils will start dissolving into that plastic or start attracting the other chemical volatile compounds into the plant itself. You don't want your weed smelling like the plastic storage aisle at Walmart. And then you can have the farmer release your quarantine batches once the proper regulations are met, and then transfer to a manufacturing facility with a proper paperwork and manifest. Keep copies of your paperwork in your FDA CGM files prepared for inspection. Stay up to date on all your required FDA documentation of farm and facility to eliminate errors during your annual FDA inspection. So extraction. Create SOPs for processing, storing, and handling of your batches. Use SOPs to educate all your employees and avoid errors. Keep employee acknowledgement of training verification in your HR files. That way, if you have issues, you have a paper trail of actually being able to fire somebody. Material preparation may include bucking buds off stems, grinding plant matter to specifications, and oven drying to decarboxylate. We're in a business park out in Estacada, and since October last year, there have been 3 CBD businesses moving into warehouse spaces in our business park. One of them is specifically grinding and drying. That's all they do, is grind and dry. And then there's another one, and I thought it was going to be a winery making wine with how big their vats and their ethanol de-waxing columns are. And interestingly enough, they both had stop work order permit or stop work order notices taped to their doors, which lasted about a month and a half. All right, we'll get down to permitting. So you can have your CBD, your hemp handling business be specific to a need of what the industry is. And having a company that all they do is grind and dry, that fascinated me. Because, down the street, there was a field, probably, 100 acres or so, and they had hemp plants growing that they harvested. They were small. They were probably about maybe 3 feet tall. They're very immature, but they cut them down and they baled those up, and then they sent them over to these guys, and they just put them through these huge industrial dryers that are about the size of a pizza oven, right? But they just have conveyor belts and they have heat going through. So then they go through these dryers and they come through, and then it gets grinded down into a flour consistency. You want to open up your surface area for oil extraction. It's different for whatever solvent that you're using, like butane is way different than CO2 and ethanol and how you prepare your material. Okay, cool. So keep it dry and cool, your raw matter. Up to 13% moisture can transfer into and out of your plant matter during storage. Ideal moisture content for extraction is less than 3%. There's a lot of research about active moisture in cannabis, how it affects microbial count and chlorophyll mobility during extraction. Let's see, facility layout for workflow, spaces to consider. Can't say enough about raw material storage. Keep it dry, keep it cool. Have SOPs for receiving and storing. Holding the raw material is what the FDA calls it. If your space is too small at your production facility or your extraction facility, create a production schedule with sales that procures raw material from a farmer on a regular schedule. You never want to get behind in your oil production for the finished product or for your buyer. You never want to say, no, I don't have anything to sell you. That's not good for business. Label your batches. Can't say enough about labeling your batches. Washington State used to have a harvest date required. They took that away. Whatever the rules of law are, definitely follow the rules of law. But if you need more information on your labels, do it. Harvest date. Put your THC percentage on your CBD percentage. When that test sample was taken, by who? What lab did it? Preparation room for extraction is a necessary space to have. You need to do some final drying for moisture specifications in your extraction process, whatever that percentage is in your SOP. You need space for grinding. Grinding creates a lot of dust, so that room is definitely going to be a dirty room. You need space for packing the column sock. Some butane systems use column socks, which are 12-foot long socks, 8 inches wide, and you just pack your weed in there, put it in the column. Preparations are different for different solvents and for product development. Some products require the chlorophyll to be left in. Some products don't want the chlorophyll to be left in. So when you're making your business plan, you're deciding on what it is that you want to make, you got to talk with your salespeople and your buyers and ask them what product it is they are developing. Edible makers require a totally different product than topical makers. Edible makers cannot have the wax in their oil that topical makers will use. And even if the edible maker says, oh, no, it's okay, I'll take your unrefined oil, don't do it, because then you'll be eating the cost of that oil when their formulation fails. So let's see. After working at ERPCA, gain appreciation for the cleanliness required for an FDA-approved facility. Your facility has to be clean, even on a farm Where you're storing your weed, have somebody sweep it out. If you have rodent traps, the FDA is going to want to see maintenance documentation on those rodent traps. Let's see. And then and keeping a schedule of your maintenance, too, is required. Okay, so we have national fire codes that have been established for extraction facilities. Those began in Colorado and Washington. Initially, and you may know Washington, California is still the way of where they don't want any dangerous extraction facilities, and that includes high pressure or butane or solvents like butane. But a lot of people are working their way around that and around those codes. But from Washington and Colorado came the National Fire Code. And in that National Fire Code, there's code for extraction rooms and code for extraction facilities. They're completely separate. A room is where your system is. The facility is your building. Let's see, so extraction rooms have specific building code requirements. Their size should be designed to meet HVAC air exchange code requirements, and that will have a minimal cash demand. Your solvent can be stored in a separate space specific to the building code requirements it may need. The amount of ethanol you have will trigger different building code requirements, whether or not you need to have a fire sprinkler system, or if you just need to simply have a roll-up door on your space. Extraction facilities overall have building codes separate from the extraction room. Stage advice from Seattle Fire Marshal. I was one of the first CO2 extraction facilities in King County in the state of Washington. I worked with State of Washington Building Code Council on developing code for CO2 extraction. Fire marshals love CO2. They hate butane, and they kind of have an indifference towards ethanol. So stage advice from the Seattle Fire Marshal: meet with your fire marshal before going to building permitting. Some fire marshals have the power of approving permits over the building code department. There are national fire codes for cannabis extraction rooms and facilities. These codes were developed back in 2013 based on Colorado and Washington regulations. They are available online. The City of Seattle has comprehensive building code with references to the national code. So in building your facility, you have to know how much solvent you're going to be using in your process, how much solvent you're going to have waste, and how much solvent you're going to have in storage for what you're going to need for your extraction. You need to have flow charts on all of those. And the fire marshal, when they come in to do your inspection, will want to see the rolling inventory of your solvent use. I keep mine on I have a laminated sheet of paper that just has the date, the amount used, the rolling inventory, and then the initials. And then whenever I finish that solvent, I take a photocopy of that. It goes into the file. I just wipe it off, and I start over on my new vat. Okay, so know what the worst case scenario is of your choice solvent, meaning if all of your solvents spilled, what amount will trigger the lower explosive level? This will dictate the type of electrical components you need. Most people do not do the math for the lower explosive level of solvents and end up building up more than what is required. HVAC companies love your cash. They will not do the math for you. Okay, depending on the choice of solvent, the extraction space is the most expensive part of the build-out. A small 20-liter CO2 system can fit in a 400-square-foot room and save money on required HVAC and electrical. A system that uses flammable solvents will require spark-proof electrical components. Refer to the National Fire Code. Some fire districts will allow a roll-up door to suffice for adequate airflow in facilities that only use ethanol. It pays to know before you go. Visit with your fire marshal first. Fire guys are awesome. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a female and I love firemen. All right. So, and I tell you, just a little back history on me. I'm one of the founders of the Cannabis Defense Coalition. We were just a pedal to the where the rubber met the asphalt and changing policy in the state of Washington with cannabis. And our facility, our meeting space was in this warehouse. It was a tinderbox, really. And fire marshals came in to do our inspection, and like all of them came in, like all the cute ones, the young ones, old ones. There were like 8 or 10 fire guys that came to do the inspection. And they walked through, and I had extension cords and holiday lighting draped everywhere. And they were like, oh my God, what is all of this? And they were tripping over everything. And then women, I had as many women as I could possibly get to distract them. And as soon as they came to give us our report, the lead guy, he all of a sudden got a beep on his shoulder radio, and he's like, oh, we got to go. And they left, so we never really got the inspection report. But again, I kind of think that the firemen were, and I've heard things before, that the firemen, they're not against cannabis, and they'll do everything in their power to help you succeed in your build-out. So they'll tell you what it is that you need in your space, and then come back and help you resolve issues that you're having with either building permitting or even spacing out your HVAC and sizing your HVAC. Those guys are really smart. Okay, so then equipment. Every year, the scaling up of equipment at the December Vegas MJ BizCon show just blows me away. This stuff is crazy expensive, and so that's why I'm always thrilled to learn as someone creating a simple system using a sage knowledge of essential oil extraction. Again, I keep going back to steam distillation and cold ethanol extraction. To me, I think it's going to be the future of how we're making our CBD oil. It's quick. It's practical, it's very inexpensive, and then we can actually create a full profile of what the flower is from both of those extraction methods without going to something like butane or even needing the expensive equipment of CO2 extraction. Okay, so how many people here have built out their own extraction systems? All right, just a couple. Okay, so I'm thinking a lot of you are looking at this equipment and looking at the costs and just kind of thinking, do I really need a venture capitalist? And, do I really need to sell my soul? Or can I find an engineer with a passion of cannabis extraction and meet someplace in the middle of the road and create a really cool facility? Do both. Definitely, I hear a lot of companies say that they don't want anybody who uses cannabis working in their facilities. No, as a cannabis user, I think that's really poor advice. So you really need to have somebody who knows the product development, how to handle it, how to talk to farmers, all of the different influences on what to do. So funny, when you're looking at this expensive equipment, talk to somebody who is, meet up, have lunch, become friends, not just on Facebook, but, go to the pot shops, or go to a farm, take a savvy cannabis user with you when you go to the farms and talking to a farmer, and then go to lunch afterwards and have a talk about that farm and the product that they're trying to sell. What would you do with it? And what quality is that product? Would somebody who has no cannabis experience know what the quality of the hemp is? Not at all. So you're really risking a lot when you're not engaging with somebody who actually uses the product. Okay, so the FDA it's really cool that we're at a point now with any federal or any prohibition that we're demanding that FDA, you got to create some rules for us because we have so much product, we got to move it, and we need these rules, and we have somewhat legalization. So come on. And we have huge corporations that are making these demands too from the FDA. It's not just us small people, struggling to sell 60,000 gummies a month or 3,000 bottles of tincture of CBD a month. Okay, so yeah, I'm really flattered by the FDA, and I've been learning more about the guy who created the FDA. His name's Washington Wiley, and he had a passion for clean food. And he actually had a crew of people that he called the Poison Crew. And they were the ones who tested the products that were made with all of the different preservatives, or, like before Heinz ketchup, and he was the guy who said, no, I'm not going to use these preservatives. I'm going to have a clear bottle so you can see that it's red, that it's tomato, and it's not green, where you could use an amber bottle and cover up the green that your tomato ketchup turned into, or because of all the different colors that you're using. Okay, cool, I'm running out of time. Okay, so four topics of the guidance. Anyway, FDA's dietary supplement, CGMPs, Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 110, 21 CFR 110. Yeah, that's awesome. We have this to refer to now. 4 topics of guidance are manufacturing, holding, labeling, and packaging. So manufacturing, make sure that what you're doing adheres to all of the dietary supplement regulations and policy. Earlier in my presentation, you have to have somebody full-time. When you're building out your facility, have somebody full-time developing your facility to that CMG or CGMP requirements. You have to have the documentation, you have to have the building code, and then you also have to have all of the SOPs. Labeling is just huge. And then creating those spaces in your facility that are required for the dietary supplement CGMPs. So that's your holding space. And then also the packaging and having, the proper packaging that's required. Labeling isn't just on your finished product, putting on the California Prop 65 saying that, hey, this is going to have problems with you breastfeeding your child if you take this. No, labeling is on your harvest. It's on your product and its storage. Have everything clearly labeled. When you're taking cuttings from your clones, bothers me. Label those cuttings of your clones so we always know what the strain is. Yeah, everything's a hybrid now. Just got to say that. Okay, build out your facility, create standard operating procedures, using these topic guidelines as an outline for your processes. So have an SOP. You're going to have several SOPs for manufacturing, SOP for holding, SOP for labeling, SOP for packaging. That way everything's clear. And the dietary, the DSCGMP, you can use as an outline for creating these SOPs. So pull it up on your computer, pull up Word right next to it, create an outline in Word that is exactly what the CGMP is, but just put in your facility in that outline and had just a copy and paste. This is my facility, this is our labeling. And then that way you're going to avoid a lot of pitfalls when it comes to actually getting certified as an FDA-approved facility. Study the FDA warning letters to learn common pitfalls in manufacturing facilities. And again, one person has to be dedicated full-time to these requirements during build-out and continue through manufacturing. And then also leading up to your annual FDA inspection of your facility and all of that documentation that has to be had. Join the American Herbal Products Association to stay current with FDA demands. APA provides training via webinars. They provide CGMP SOP templates specific to the FDA's inclusion of hemp and cannabis. So American Herbal Products Association, APA for short, is a valuable resource for setting up your facilities. The states have developed their rules of laws for regulating the adult use of cannabis and CBD and the current tracking systems based on these federal rules. Metrics, BioTrack, those are not just willy-nilly software applications. Those are based on the DSCGMP. And as you read through the DSCGMP, you'll recognize that what we have to put in for the tracking system for cannabis currently. All right, cool. It's 2:19, and I'm guessing there are a lot of other facilities. And I'm sorry I'm not more prepared. I had a lot of pictures of equipment from the business show. For CO2 extraction, If you want to do large-scale CO2 extraction, go to Eden Labs and ask about the Yakima Chief. Originally, Yakima Chief was built for hops oil extraction, and then has been changed over to start doing extraction of cannabis oil. But that's the model facility for large-scale CO2 extraction. And okay, cool. Any questions or? All right. Yeah. Cool.
Do you have any comments on steam distillation?
Yeah. Well, capturing the essential oils. So we do it 2 different ways, and you can learn about this. So GW Pharmaceuticals has released their patent on how they make Sativex, and I encourage everybody to read that so you can learn how to make cannabis oil pretty much how they do, and then compete with them. So what they do is they oven dry their material, and in the oven they have a cold trap that captures the essential oils as they come out of the oven. So it's a convection oven, then there's a vacuum that pulls it off, goes through a cold trap, and then those are collected off and put in a separator funnel. That's one way. The other way on the steam distillation is, well, actually what I'm getting to is that the essential oils that come off of the 2 different methods are entirely different profiles. So don't short yourself of collecting essential oils by just steam distillation. For equipment, there's not much different in the profile that we're getting from using the chromatograph reservoirs than what we're getting off of stainless steel vats. It's still. Somebody I could refer you to is Gunther, Guenther, and Essential Oils. He has, I think it's like a 30-volume collection, and he is the go-to for everything when it comes to the chemistry of essential oils and the extraction of them and using all the different solvents, getting all the way down to isolate and crystallates. And then another one is D Gold, and he just has it's cannabis science, the science of cannabis, D Gold. So two books to look into to obtain. D Gold is cannabis science, and then Gunther's essential oils, and you'll learn everything that you need to know about steam distillation. It happens at 100 torr and at 65 Celsius, and you'll see the steam go through the plant matter, and it's exactly the same temperature and the same vapor pressure every single time. So no matter what equipment that you're using, that chemistry is going to follow through on that process. So yeah, steam.
What would you think if they ran the biomass through the same processing facility as they do for oil?
Yeah, that's something I would love to try, because really it's the same function, same method. Where you're heating up your water and then that steam is running through the plant matter, right? And then you're going through your condenser tube, and then you're just collecting off the hydrosol. And in that hydrosol are all your essential oils, and then those separate. I mean, you can even freeze your hydrosol and your oils will just pour off. I think it's definitely going to be done, but I don't think the demand for essential oils is quite there yet, nor is the hemp production, the farming. So we'll be there, I'm guessing, within a couple of years.